This video will show you how to replace the power steering pump on a Toyota Matrix. This will be located along the passenger side of your engine compartment. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. We're going to have to remove our serpentine belt from the power steering pump for removal. To gain access to the tensioner for the serpentine belt, let's remove our engine cover. As far as removing the engine cover, typically you're going to find that you have two 10mm mounting nuts, one in this port, the second one in the circular port right here. Ours is missing. Along the back side here, you will have two small plastic tabs. These are very simple. You can just lift those up and out of position. As I mentioned, there should be one there. Ours is missing. We'll continue on to our plastic tabs. Go ahead and remove that engine cover. We'll set it aside. Now we can focus on removing that serpentine belt. Now you can see the belt goes over some pulleys and under others. Pay attention to the belt routing. Now once you've taken note of that, we're going to continue on along the back side of the engine area where the pulleys are. This is where you're going to find a 19mm area you should be able to grab onto, and we're going to carefully start pivoting our tensioner. I'm pivoting this clockwise, slowly compressing my shock along the back side there. Now that releases tension from my belt, I'm going to be extremely careful of any pinch points as I continue on dislodging my serpentine belt. We'll slowly release pressure from that tensioner. Once again, being aware of any pinch points, we'll get our tool out of place. Now we can pause on the pulley side of the engine. Let's make our way along the back side, close to the firewall. This is where we're going to gain access to our power steering pump from along the top. As we make our way along the back side of the engine, you want to make sure that your exhaust manifold is cool to the touch so you don't get hurt. Now with that said, as we look down along this area, we can see our power steering pressure line. We can see the bracket it's mounted to, but you can also see this wiring harness. Now this leads to the pressure sensor right along the top of the power steering pump. It has a rubber seal along the top. Typically for that, you can pull it out of place. The electrical connector will have a locking tab. Now we can see the connector down there. The orientation of my connector has the locking tab facing down, so I'm just going to squeeze that in and pull this out of place. Of course, a quick inspection for corrosion. As you can tell, that looks good, so we'll set it aside. We can see that pressure sensor down in this area. Now this is still pretty open. We can continue working from up along the top area. We have a 10mm headed mounting bolt holding our pressure line to the bracket in this area. Let's go ahead and remove that. A thorough inspection of all mounting hardware will replace as necessary. Now you can tell that we do have some movement from this bracket. We can pivot it. The line itself should not move because it's still attached to the power steering pump. Now as you use an 18mm for this fitting, keep in mind there is going to be power steering fluid inside of the system, unless of course you had a leak for some reason. So of course you want to make sure you have a collection receptacle under this area so you can collect and recycle all fluid properly. I'm going to use an 18mm for my fitting here. Now this can be accessed from in the passenger side wheel well or from up here. I typically like to loosen the line from here. To remove the pump though, we will be making our way behind the passenger side front wheel. There we are. A thorough inspection of the line to confirm it's still in good usable order. If anything's rotted or weak, you're going to want to service it or replace it. As you can tell, our line is still in good usable order, so let's pause in the engine compartment, safely raise and support, and remove the passenger side front wheel. We're going to remove all 5 of our 21mm lug nuts so we can remove the wheel. Now that I have the wheel out of the way, let's make our way inside the front wheel well. As I make my way into this area, I can see where my power steering pump is. Now we have our feed hose. This leads from our power steering reservoir up inside the engine compartment. As you remove this clamp, it's probable fluid will make its way out of this area. So we have our collection receptacle under here. Now for this clamp, it's a squeezable clamp, so I'm just using some long nose pliers. I'm going to squeeze on all 3 of my ears, and we'll carefully start sliding this up the hose. You may have to use a hose pick to carefully break this free from the power steering pump. Obviously, we don't want to damage the hose in any way. Now I'll take a hold of that hose, just give it a little wiggle here. There we are, there's our fluid. We'll let that drain into our collection receptacle. With that hose disconnected, we're going to move along to our mounting hardware for the power steering pump. Now for this, it's easiest to gain access if you carefully remove the side engine cover from inside the passenger side front wheel well. This can be done fairly simply. You're going to find you have 1 plastic push clip and 2 10mm headed mounting bolts. We'll start with the push clip. For this push clip, you want to carefully start removing the center to unlock it, and then the outer portion should slide out as well. Just a quick inspection of that as you continue on. Let's remove each of those 2 bolts next. Now we can flex that down as necessary, and we can gain access to our power steering pump hardware up in this area. We can see the pulley. Now that we have that hose out of place, we're going to pay attention along our power steering pump pulley. Now if you were to turn this, you should be able to see deep inside some mounting hardware. We're looking for this 14mm mounting nut you can see right here. Now of course this does have a mounting bolt. The bolt will come through from the inboard side towards this mounting nut. I'm using a 14mm for each side. Just want to make sure you're in the right area here. There's a 12mm bolt that can be confusing if you're looking at the wrong area. Now I'm going to leave that mounting bolt in place. We'll continue on to the next piece of hardware. We can turn this as necessary. We can see the next piece just above the first. 14mm for this as well. There's that. Now that I have both of the mounting nuts out of place, we need to continue on to our 2 mounting bolts. It's common for them to be stuck in place. Now, if that is the case, we're going to carefully try to drive them out of position. You can use a hammer and a brass punch if necessary, whatever's easiest for you. We'll just keep doing this until we can get both of the bolts out of there so we can remove that power steering pump. Now that I have both of those bolts making their way towards the inner bracket, we can start removing them. Now on both of my bolts, they're actually stuck in place, which is why I had to tap them out of place with a hammer. So I'm going to have a little bit of a hard time trying to remove these, but typically you can just slide them out. When you do so, you want to make sure you're holding onto that power steering pump so it doesn't fall. This is stuck in here, so I'm going to continue on tapping it out of place. There's one of my bolts. Of course, we'll clean this up, give it a thorough inspection. For now, let's just go ahead and set it aside. There's our second mounting bolt. Both of those bolts are the exact same bolts. You don't have to worry about mixing them up. Now the next thing we'll have to do is carefully start prying this out of here. We're going to find that we do have adjustable bushings holding this in place. Now let's get this over to the bench. Now I'm over at the bench. I need to start removing this bracket from my power steering pump. It's very common for these bolts to be stuck in place just like all the others so far, so I'm just going to be using a vise. I'm going to hold on to the nut end of this bracket. We'll be using a 14mm for our bolt head. While I'm loosening this, we should find that the entire bolt spins throughout this area. So my bolt clearly broke. We'll just remove what we can from this for now. Now clearly our bolt did break, as I mentioned. If yours did not, you want to go ahead and remove that bracket, give it a thorough inspection, and then you're going to prepare to install that onto the brand new power steering pump. Clearly, I have to get my bolts out of place. Okay, I got the bracket off of the power steering pump. There it is, friend. Over at the vehicle, we need to pay attention to our power steering bracket attached to our engine block here. Now what we want to pay attention to specifically are the two bushings that you can see on the outer portion of the bracket. These are actually brass bushings that need to be driven outward. We don't need to remove them, but we want to have them as close to flush with the bracket as possible. When you go to tighten the power steering pump in place, these bushings will press up against the pump, holding it securely. With the bushings in the proper positioning, continue on with a wire brush. We're going to clean up this area. Now that I have that area cleaned, I'm just going to use some parts cleaner. We don't need very much here. A thorough inspection of everything. The bracket's fully cleaned. Let's pay attention to our steel line and our rubber feed hose. Just make sure the fitting's still in good usable order, nothing's rotted, weak, or damaged. And as for that fill hose, you just want to make sure it's not dry rotted, cracked, or weak in any way. All this looks good. Okay, friend, let's prepare the brand new pump for installation. Now we have our cleaned bracket, and I'm also replacing my mounting bolt since, as you know, mine did break. As far as this mounting bracket, we want to make sure we have it in the proper placement. It goes along the top of the power steering pump. We can see where our pressure sensor is. We'll make sure that we bring this bracket over. We have a small alignment ear that just slides down into this area. Now, of course, the mounting bolt will have to make its way from the pulley side all the way through here, and then we'll just go ahead and snug it up. Be careful of any pinch points as we tighten this. Of course, we'll make sure it's in the proper orientation as well. Just double check to make sure that bracket's fully in place. Let's get this in the vehicle. We installed our bracket on the pump. Let's prepare to install our brand new power steering pump. Now that I have that up in this area, I'm going to focus on installing my mounting bolts. For each one of my mounting bolts, I've cleaned them, and I like to use some anti-seize on the smooth area of each one of my mounting bolts. I have both of the bolts through, so I'm just going to continue on with my mounting nuts. For those nuts, it's easiest if you just have them on your socket already. Typically, once you get them on the bolt, you can either turn the bolt itself or you can turn the mounting nut. So what I'm doing here is I'm just turning the bolt head on the inboard side there. I'm holding the nut with my socket. Sometimes that's easiest. And now since it is started on, there we are. Now I'm just going to leave this one loose. Let's go ahead and start on the other mounting nut as well. Once we have both of these started on, go ahead and snug them up and torque each of them to 27 foot-pounds. Just like the first bolt, I'm just going to turn the other side here. I'll make sure it's started on. Make sure I'm holding onto the bolt with my 14mm wrench on the far side. Now, as you attempt to tighten this, you're going to find that it progressively gets a little bit harder. And the reason for that is because of that bushing that I had told you about on the bracket attached to the engine. Now, for that bushing, we also heard a little creaking noise as I was tightening this. That's just the bushing moving into the proper positioning. I do have this one snug, so I'm just going to go ahead and torque it. Make sure we're holding on to that bolt. There's that one. Let's go ahead and do the same exact thing to the next mounting bolt prior to moving on. Just double check that one real quick. Now that we have this torqued in place, let's continue on with our electrical connector wiring harness up along the top area. Now, of course, we did remove this from the top. You can do that from there as well. I'm just going to reach in here. We'll do it from at the bottom. Let's align our locking tab, press it in, listen for a click. Right there. Audible click there. Just a light tug, confirming it's properly secured. Let's protect that connector with its protective boot. Slide that right down on there. Now we'll continue on with our power steering pressure line. For that, we need to make sure we properly align it. We're going to start in the fitting by hand, confirming we're not cross-threading it into the wrong positioning. Now I'm sure my line is started in properly. I'm going to pause on fully tightening it. I'm going to continue up to my bracket. For this bracket, you should be able to pivot it and align it as needed. We'll continue on with our mounting bolt once it is aligned. Okay, right there's bottomed out. We'll just make sure that's snug. Now we can make our way back down to that fitting. Go ahead and snug that up as well. Now we can tighten that line. Right there's bottomed out. Make sure that that's nice and tight so you do not have a power steering fluid leak from this area. After confirming that that's secured, let's continue on to the fill hose next. That's the larger diameter hose here. Just going to take that, bring it straight down. Reinstall your clamp. When you reinstall the clamp, we want to make sure we have it in as close to the original position as possible. Double check to make sure that hose does not slide out of place. If the hose clamp is damaged in any way or weak, you definitely want to go ahead and replace it. One last quick inspection in this area. Let's go ahead and clean it down so we know if we have any leaks in the future here, and we'll be continuing on with aligning our serpentine belt along the bottom. Let's just have a quick look at the belt here. While we have this area open, I like to make sure that my belt's going around the pulleys as it needs to, at least down along this area. We'll continue on with our plastic panel. Now, as far as my hardware for this, I do have one broken adapter that goes into this port here. That's okay. I'm just going to switch this out. I'm going to use a push clip. We'll drive that in, lock it in by pressing in the center. Same thing for the next push clip over here. This one we had already removed from this area. Press that in. Let's make sure we tighten our 10mm bolt over there. Double check to make sure this is secured. Let's go ahead and reinstall our passenger side front wheel. Once you have the wheel in place, go ahead and start on all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts. We'll bottom them out in a crisscross manner, get the wheel back on the ground, and then torque each of them to 76 foot-pounds. I've got the wheel back on the ground, and now I'm going to torque these to 76 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Now let's make our way back up into the engine compartment. Now from in the engine compartment, we need to pay attention to our serpentine belt in comparison to all of our pulleys. You can see that some of the pulleys are ribbed. Other pulleys, like this one down here, are smooth. The ribbed pulleys will have the ribbed portion of the belt, and the smooth pulleys are going to have the smooth portion. Now with that said, let's get our belt in the proper placement. Get it around that power steering pump down there. Now at this point, I'm holding the slack of the belt. You can tell that I still have to make my way over to that tensioner, so we have enough slack to be able to get the belt in place. 19mm adapter on my serpentine belt tool. Now as I start pulling the belt on here, I want to pause so you can have a quick look in this area. You can tell that the belt is not properly seated on this pulley. If I was to leave it in this area, it's going to cause damage to the belt and potentially other items as well. Pay close attention to each and every pulley as you continue on. Now let's just double check the belt real quick here. This is looking pretty good. All the way around, I can see each and every one of my pulleys all the way back to my power steering pump. Let's reinstall our engine cover. We're attempting to get this in the proper positioning so we can install our 2 10mm headed mounting nuts along the front, and then we have our 2 plastic tabs along the back side. As you know, during our removal, one of our forward pieces of hardware was missing. I'm going to take that mounting nut, I'll slide it right into my socket here. I can easily bring this down into place. You can also use a magnet if necessary. Obviously we would start this in as well. Go ahead and tighten this. Tighten your second piece of mounting hardware. Just double check to make sure that's completely secure. Just going to take that mounting nut, I'll slide it right into my socket here. I can easily bring this down into place. You can also use a magnet if necessary. Obviously, we would start this in as well. Go ahead and tighten this. Tighten your second piece of mounting hardware. Just double check to make sure that's completely secure. Now it's time to fill the power steering system. Prior to opening up the reservoir, let's just use a rag. We're going to clean around where the cap is. We don't want any miscellaneous debris making its way inside the system. Once you've done that, go ahead and turn the cap counterclockwise. We're going to remove that. We can give it a quick inspection here. Just going to give this another wipe. I'm trying to make sure nothing makes its way inside the system as I do this. Now we can continue on with the manufacturer's specified power steering fluid. I'm just going to use a small funnel for this. If you were looking at the reservoir, you can see that we do have fill levels. Now when we do go to fill this, you're going to find that fluid will have to make its way down through the entire power steering system. So once we get the reservoir up to the top line, we're going to make sure both wheels are up and off the ground in the front, and then we're going to turn the steering wheel all the way in one direction and all the way in the other. We're going to repeat this process several times, and what you're going to find is the power steering rack will draw the fluid throughout the system. I'm in the passenger compartment. I have the key in the on position without the vehicle running. Both front wheels are up off the ground. Let's go ahead and turn that wheel. While I'm doing this, if you are paying attention to the reservoir, you're going to typically see air bubbles making their way up, and the fluid level will start making its way down. Now, I went side to side several times with the steering wheel. The fluid level's low, so I'm just going to add a little bit here. Now, when we do go to start this, typically fluid will continue going down, so I'm just going to bring it up just above this maximum line here. So remove that funnel. We're going to reinstall our power steering reservoir cap. So now at this point, we're ready to prepare to start the vehicle. When we do start the vehicle, start it, let it run for 5 seconds and turn it right back off. You're going to make your way back out here and triple check the belt to confirm it's seated on each and every pulley properly. Assuming it is, we're going to restart the vehicle and let it run. When it's running, pay attention to your power steering reservoir. Okay, I can see that the belt looks perfect along each and every one of my pulleys. Let's go ahead and run the vehicle now, and once again, we're paying attention to that power steering reservoir fluid. Now that I've run the vehicle for a short while here, I don't have any noise coming from my power steering pump or from my Serpentine belt. I'm just going to top off that reservoir one last time. Now my system is still cold. I have not been running it or driving it for very long here, so I'm not going up to the hot maximum line. I just want to go to the cold here. Just go a little bit higher than the minimum. Right around there. That looks good. Now keep in mind, as the fluid does heat up, it will start to expand a little bit. We don't want to go too high. If we're above the maximum line, that's going to be an issue. Make sure that cap's on there securely. It's not loose in any way, so no miscellaneous debris or moisture make its way into your power steering system. Okay, friend, we finished our installation. Now the next thing you need to do is run the vehicle, double check for leaks, close the hood, and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.